Well, hi again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. This is our 2026 Draft Prospect Show, and we are going to feature a quarterback right now, a guy that everybody's going to know in the next week or so, Carson Beck, quarterback out of the University of Miami. If you don't know anything about him, we're going to talk about him, and we're going to really look and dissect some certain spots or portions of his game. But the story is simple. Kid out of Jacksonville, Florida, Mr. Florida, football player of the year. He's also a great basketball player. And he ends up going to the University of Georgia, plays in Athens. He leaves and decides to take the portal route to Miami, and now he's playing for a national championship, guys. He's got 29 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He was sacked 17 times. He's not afraid to run the ball, but he's done a lot of things in a new place and putting the University of Miami back on the map, where everybody's now going, the U. They've got it back again. And Carson Beck certainly a big portion of that. Vincent Turner is with us, Joey Clinkscales, Brian LeBel. I am Harper LeBel. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Please subscribe. We appreciate it. And Vincent, if you don't mind, let's start with Carson Beck. The story is pretty simple. I've gone over everything, but when you go into a new university and you get a chance really where everything is given to you carte blanche, including a very nice NIL deal, it may not be the easiest thing to get everybody to like you. There may be some resident local guys that are upset that you're there and you took over the spot for one of the guys that everybody liked on that team. Carson Beck just played very well and did the things that needed to get done in order to get this team up to a national championship level. They're playing Indiana on Monday for the national championship. There are a lot of things to like. There may be a few things to dislike, but what impresses you most in terms of just looking at his game and what he's been able to do in such a very short period of time at the University of Miami?
I like what you just said the first couple of sentences. He went to an environment. Did anybody really think he was going to go to the University of Miami and fit into that type of culture? I didn't. Coming from the University of Georgia, there's so much a different culture. And then the pressure he went in there with because the type of team Miami had. And all they needed was a quarterback, and you saw what happened. And then coming out with the first game against Notre Dame and playing like he did. Because he doesn't play like that. They don't beat Notre Dame, and they're not in the college football playoffs. But I like a lot about Carson Beck. A guy that left Georgia, a lot of people was really railroading him, say, hey, they glad to see him gone. And then you kind of think, hey, he's going into Miami with all that prestige, all that great history, all the great players that came through there, from Gino Torretta to Bernie Kosar to Michael Irvin, Warren Sapp, Ray Lewis. And look what he done. He played pretty well, but in some games, Miami, I think, could have been easily undefeated, especially in that Louisville game when he threw 4 picks. But the thing about him, what you can't say, he got his team here. Did I think they were going to go through Texas A&M? No way. Did I think they were going to beat Ohio State? No way. And then Ole Miss, I kind of started believing. And he played well enough in that game, and really he was the difference because the throws he made down the stretch. But hey, he's a guy from Florida, and he was on TV after the interview doing this to you. And one thing I loved about him going into that game, he made a comment, and he's a very experienced quarterback. He said, I'm glad and respect Ole Miss is here, but I would have surely loved if Georgia would have beat Ole Miss because I wanted Georgia. Hey, what can you say? The guy's right here. He's in the national championship game, and they had the toughest road that any of the teams left. As I just mentioned, I didn't think they were going to beat A&M. I didn't think they were going to beat Ohio State. They beat Ole Miss, and Carson Beck has them back home playing for the national championship. Back to you, Mr. LeBel.
Joey, he's 6'4", 200 pounds, just about an ideal size for a quarterback. He's got a strong arm. There are so many things to like about what he does. The 29 touchdowns, obviously, the impression of being able to lead a team to a national championship game. And if he wins it, will that add even more clout and cachet to his game? And would he move up in terms of the rankings, or do we have to wait for his pro day in order to be able to make that final determination?
Well, I think there's always a misnomer about pro days. Pro days usually just help the guys who are lower on the totem pole and not necessarily the guys that, like this guy. I mean, we have 3 or 4 years worth of tape on this guy from Georgia and Miami. And you're just trying to kind of figure out if what you see on tape is the same thing you see when you see this guy in person. So as a football player, he has prototypical size for a quarterback, 6'4", 6'5", 220, 225. They list him at 485. That's probably close to being pretty accurate. I think the arm strength is good. I don't think the arm strength is great. I've seen many times, especially on the deep ball, that concern me a little bit with the arm strength. Now, that being said, he's coming off a UCL surgery in his right elbow, which was one of the reasons why he left Georgia and decided to enter the portal and go to Miami, because of that elbow injury, along with a lot of other things, and some of it had to do with his leadership ability. So I don't think he has great instincts sometimes as a passer. We just talked about a kid who I think has really good instincts. We're going to talk about another kid who I think has really good instincts. I'm not sure Carson Beck has great instincts in the pocket as a passer. I think sometimes he'll get a little jittery, a little bit discombobulated to say, and do a couple things uncharacteristically. Now, as a passer, the numbers say he's accurate, and that's true. However, I don't always like his ball placement. Sometimes he makes the receivers have to be superheroes to catch the ball, and he's got a great group of receivers. So some of that bothers me at times with this guy. And he is risk averse sometimes, which means he will take the short pass when he has a deep guy open. So he'll try to play safe, and that's fine. You can do that when you have as talented a group of players as the University of Miami has. And I think the thing about Carson Beck, he has to be around a group of guys that are really talented. Okay, and what I mean by that, you have some quarterbacks who can lead a group of men. I'm not sure that's Carson Beck. I think it's like the old thing that used to be happening at USC. When USC was in their heydays in the early 2000s, you could put any quarterback there, and all he had to do was a good job, because you had playmakers. You had first-round picks all over the field, from Reggie Bush to Lindell White, and the receivers they had, and the linebackers they had on defense. I mean, you had a team full of athletes, so you just needed a quarterback. He didn't have to be a superhero. He just needed to be able to lead the team. And I think Carson Beck kind of falls into that category. The quarterback we just talked about and the one we're going to talk about, I think they have a lot better leadership ability than this kid. I think this kid, he needs to be on a team that has a lot of really good football players for him to be really successful.
Brian, it appears that Carson does love the camera. You took two pictures here of him, and that's just a part of what you get sometimes with the player. Is that an inhibitor for a lot of folks? Would you rather go with somebody else that you're not worried about what he's going to say? Or is that something that you go, we're looking for something like that. We want to have someone on our team, on our roster, that's able to communicate with the fans, especially the young ones, and express themselves the way that they want to, and have the freedom to do so, especially when you're playing for a national championship. He seems to be backing it up.
Well, I think the issue here with that is, the whole Georgia situation, the way that ended, and, it was kind of mutual, but they kind of ran him out of town. I think ever since that, he's had a real chip on his shoulder. I think all season he's played with the chip on his shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And, you look at his numbers, thinking 29 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. And I think 6 of those interceptions came in their 2 losses. So if you take away the SMU game, if you take away the Louisville game, which Louisville game is probably the worst game he ever played in his life, he had 5 picks all year, and he took care of the football pretty well. For a guy that likes to use his legs, maybe a little too much. He's not a mobile guy, but he, you watched on that last drive, what was it, last week against Ole Miss, where he can make plays with his legs when the opportunity arises. And, I kind of like the chip on his shoulder. I think it's kind of giving him a competitive advantage. I think he's playing very loose because of it. Like Joey said, too, I don't think his arm's 100%, so it's kind of tough to tell where he's at. And you can kind of see that sometimes. I think in the Louisville game, you kind of see, hey, he doesn't look right. You know what I mean? He isn't 100%. I think he wasn't trusting himself. And I think the second guessing is probably one of his weaknesses where, and again, Joey mentioned this earlier, where maybe it's just stay in the pocket, stay content with what you got, maybe hold a second, try to throw the ball down the field instead of checking it down and trying to play it as safe as he does. But when he was at Georgia, that's probably what he was taught to do. So it's a different style of football that he's had to play here at Miami. He's got an opportunity to play more loose, to thrive a little bit more. He's been a winner throughout, and I know that's maybe kind of overplayed because a lot of these guys are, it's hard to find a quarterback coming out that hasn't won 75, 80% of his games throughout his collegiate career now. But there isn't much to look at and say that it's bad. Maybe he's not the most flashy guy, and maybe he's, he's an older guy, right? He's been in college for a long time because he redshirted, and then, the multiple years at Georgia, and then he's here at Miami, and that might be a knock on him. But I think realistically, if he has a chance to play, I think he could do well at the next level. And I think he's proven that with what he's done to Miami. He can come into a situation, doesn't really matter where, and he can help turn it around. I mean, Miami was an afterthought coming into the season, realistically, right? No one really gave him a second, other than Clemson. Clemson was the talk of the ACC. Nobody was really talking about the ACC other than them and a chance at the playoff, or will they get shut out? And he played really well week 1 against Notre Dame off rip, and that was kind of really impressing me, is just the ability to kind of be thrown into the fire and play well and, adapt to new situations. The tape is what it is. You got plenty of it on him, and he's got decent enough numbers. But I think that chip on his shoulder can help him at the next level if he plays his cards right and he doesn't go a little overboard with maybe some of the attitude in the comments.
Vincent, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you. I know Georgia was your team. Talk a little bit about the discipline of Kirby Smart and what is required of a University of Georgia quarterback, and how that translates into a little bit of the freedom that he may have had where he wasn't under that same discipline at Miami, but he still used what he had learned there to help make him a better person, a better quarterback in general, and one that obviously NFL scouts are going to be they're going to be all over him to see whether or not he's going to be a move up in the category of the quarterback slot and be the guy to be taken in the first round, maybe the top 10 pick.
I think good thing what Joey said. He was surrounded by a lot of talent at Georgia. A tight end that's in with Las Vegas is doing real well, a wide receiver that's with the Chargers, and playing under Kirby Smart, you got an advantage because you're going to have a hell of an offensive line. You're going to have a couple of linemen that's going to be in the NFL draft. You got some receivers now that's going to be in the NFL draft. You got some tight ends. Then on top of that, you got a running game. And I think, like Brian said, I think he learned the system that was very different. But be honest, I think he got a bad rap at Georgia. I think Georgia kind of threw him to the wolves based on the fact that what happened in the SEC championship game, he got hurt. And then they was talking about he threw so many picks that year. His last year at Georgia, I think he had 28 touchdowns, 12 INTs. But if you go back, there was a lot of receivers at Georgia that dropped a lot of passes that season. And Georgia's a different fan base. When you're doing good, hey, they with you. When you're doing bad, hey, you're going to be thrown under the bus. But he gets to Miami, and like I said, when he played well in that first game against Notre Dame, I think they got a lot of confidence to him. Then he started having that swagger. But me personally, I think he could be a very servable quarterback at the next level in the right system, in a rhythm tempo system, where it's quick pass, he get the ball out. And think about this. There's a lot of money on the table for him Monday night because he's going up against the best of the best, number 1 overall pick, and you know he's going to want to put his best performance on display come Monday night. But I like Carson Beck. I think he's got a great, great future, of course, with the right team. Of course, he's probably going to have some proven veterans like Mr. Clinkscales said. There's no doubt Mr. Clinkscales is on point. He has been around a lot of talent in his 2 places. But like Mr. Brian said, I think he's going to be a guy that's going to perform. And I think the Miami situation helped him out most of all because he was going against Georgia with some hurt feelings. But it's very surprising that Mario Cristobal went out and got him. And I think Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator at Miami, has helped him out a lot. Back to you, Mr. LeBel.
Joey, a lot of things said right there. One of the issues that he had, it normally takes, any surgery takes about 9 months. He was playing really within 7. There's going to be some accuracy issues with anyone that's just not fully there. Playing in the national championship and then literally probably getting off the bus when you get back. Well, he's going to be playing in Miami, but once he gets back the next day, he's going to be literally getting ready for the combine or, prepping himself for that. So is there going to be a rest period where he just gets to relax for just a little while and just let his shoulder, let his arm, his elbow repair to the point where it can get strong again and then he can start throwing a little bit different? Is that something that concerns a general manager?
Well, we deal with a lot of trainers, okay, and our doctors talk to their doctors, yada yada. So we will know exactly where he is physically, okay. So the fact that they put him on the field tells you that Anybody that's familiar with that UCL injury is something that usually baseball players get. It's similar to Tommy John surgery. Okay, so what it is, Brock Purdy had it a couple years ago. He got it in the playoff game versus the Eagles. Ben Roethlisberger had it. So you get quarterbacks that have that. It's just the way you throw the ball sometime, and so you can come back and you're ready to play at the start of the season because you're not throwing it 100 miles an hour like a pitcher's doing. So I'm not going to say he was playing hurt. He probably wasn't 100%. I'll say that. But after you get through 4 or 5 games, nobody's playing 100%. So I'm not going to let him take that card. He won't be able to use that card as far as I'm concerned because I've seen too many other things in his game that concerns me. And I'm not saying he won't be a first-round pick. I'm just not sure he'd be a first-round pick for me off of what I've seen.
Yeah. Brian, 29 touchdowns for him. Miami has scored 26 on the ground, so pretty even in terms of, how they distribute the ball, whether it be in the air or on the ground. He scores that big touchdown. The picture we have of him, obviously, the one at the bottom, is doing some things with his legs. He only has 50 yards rushing, but 2 touchdowns. He's a guy that will take the gamble. Is that something that concerns you? Whether or not he can throw the ball in the tight areas where he thinks he can do it, but he may not be ready to, and there's a second linebacker, the ball gets tipped and it's interception. Going for the deep ball. His accuracy isn't 100%, but he's still going to try stuff like that. There's a gunslinger type mentality that I see with him, although he's not Brett Favre. I'm not comparing him to Brett. I'm just saying, tell me a little bit more about what you are impressed with Carson and the ability for him to make it at the next level, doing what he is now at the collegiate level.
Well, if you go back and watch Miami's playoff run, whenever he's need to make a play, he's made a play, right? And listen, Malachi Toney might be the best receiver in the country. I know there's a kid in Ohio State that has probably something to say about that, but he's still a teenager and he's phenomenal. And this Miami receiving core in general is very, very good. They've assembled a very good roster around him, but Carson has been able to come in and lead these guys as well, right? I think that there's something to be said for that. I mean, when he left Georgia, I mean, he probably will tell you, he maybe open up more about it once the season's over. And, he probably was not in a great spot emotionally, mentally, football wise. I'm sure he was very down on himself and he probably had, self-doubt, but to be able to kind of pick yourself up, and the gunslinger mentality is to get back out there and just say, you know what? I don't really care what they say about my deep ball. I don't really care what they say about my accuracy because I'm going to have to make those throws anyways, right? Those plays had to be made. I can get better. I believe I can get better. So I'm going to try each and every day to do that and to prove it. I think even throughout the playoffs, he's done that. So I think that's one of the positives for him is, there's not a lot that you look at that you dislike, right? The weaknesses are what they are, and you worry about the accuracy and you worry about some of this other stuff. And maybe, what you see is what you have, right? Maybe it's not necessarily that he's a bad player, but maybe he's reached his ceiling. And a lot of, coaches and organizations kind of want a guy that they can grow and mold and can develop and become all world, but especially the quarterback position. There's nothing to really knock on Carson. I think he's done a great job. I think he's handled himself because remember, at Georgia, he was an afterthought for the first year and a half. He wasn't the guy and he knew that. So he was able to sit on the bench. He transferred. He did everything he had to do to stay on the football field. And he's done nothing but see success. I know you'd like to win some more games, maybe some more championships, but there's a lot of college quarterbacks that would kill to have the career that Carson Beck has had, throughout his extended college tenure so far.
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing to watch, and we'll get to see one of the more unique stories in all of college football, at least for this year. Miami beats Texas A&M. Then they take on the number 1 team in the country in Ohio State. They beat them. Then they beat another SEC school in Ole Miss, and they'll be taking on the number 1 team in the country in Indiana on Monday evening. And Miami's done. They're 3-0. They've got that 4th game yet to play, so it'll be very interesting to see how that turns out. And if Miami does win, obviously their defense getting after the quarterback will be a critical factor for them. But you know what? Carson Beck's going to have to play a really good game. So it could have tremendous advantages for him in his NFL draft class. We look forward to talking a little bit more about that we've enjoyed talking about him right now. So for Vincent Turner, Joey Clinkscales, for Brian LeBel, I'm Harper LeBel saying thank you for tuning in, everybody. Please subscribe and tell a friend about the show. And we also appreciate you being a part of 100 Yards of Football. This has been the 2026 NFL Draft Prospect Show featuring Carson Beck,